when do you think that, and maybe slippage started the day after the Constitution was enacted, but when did Congress really start abandoning their constitutional responsibility to write laws and create these vague mandates that unleash the bureaucratic hordes?
While there have been fits and starts throughout the history of our republic, there is no question in my mind that the biggest transformational era occurred in the 1930s. In other words, what exists today really was set in motion during the FDR administration, the New Deal era. Starting with the first term of Franklin D. Roosevelt, but really accelerating as we got into the early part of the second term of FDR. I trace a whole lot of this to a single moment, a single case decided by the Supreme Court on April 12, 1937, a case called NLRB versus Jones and Laughlin Steel. In that case, the Supreme Court reinterpreted one provision of Article 1, Section 8, the Commerce Clause, broadly enough to give Congress the power to regulate just about any activity as long as it was economic in nature. And once that happened, Congress had immense power, and power to regulate things that previous to that point had been the domain of the states. Labor, manufacturing, agriculture, mining, these are all economic activities that take place in one state at one time, typically. But all of a sudden, Congress had power to regulate anything within those areas that it wanted to. Congress panicked and said, we've got to start shifting this. So by the end of the 1930s, Congress was shifting to a very dramatic degree the lawmaking power through these vague laws, and it's continued to this very day, and that's a problem.
So it is, all of that is preceded, I believe, by the push by the progressive movement to make bureaucrats unfireable.
Yes.
And the vision was, and it's a very incredibly elitist vision, but the vision was, there are certain people who went to the right schools and came from the right families, and well, they're just smarter than the rest of us.
Experts.
So we need the experts. We need to put them in power and make sure they can't be fired by anybody.
Yeah.
And I think it's a wicked idea, and very contra the founders.
Right, absolutely, and it's also quite distinctively a Wilsonian idea. Woodrow Wilson was the first true academian American president, and he was an elitist. He was a racist, and he also believed strongly in the need for governing through experts. And while he was not as successful as Franklin D. Roosevelt would be a few administrations later, he sort of started to set this in motion. Interestingly enough, when Franklin D. Roosevelt was serving as governor of New York, he made a statement. I don't remember the quote exactly, but he uttered words to the effect that, as I look at forms of tyranny that have arisen throughout the world, I've concluded that if we ever encounter a type of tyranny in America, it will be a kind of soft, gentle, kind-appearing form of tyranny that will appear in the form of experts. Experts who will purport to have the ability to conceive of and remedy each problem because of their vast expertise. And they'll consolidate basically all power in the federal government and taking away power that would otherwise have been exercised at the state and local level. That is exactly how it turned out. Ironically, somewhat hypocritically under his leadership.
Yeah. I feel like particularly today, we are suffering under the pretense of knowledge from experts, particularly our healthcare experts within the federal government who make these sweeping statements as if they understand exactly what we're dealing with COVID-19. And clearly they don't, and any honest scientist would say we can't possibly know enough to decide all of these things, but they go ahead and do it anyway. And I think they know better, but they pretend that they know everything.